I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees.
Apple is worth more than Walmart, Disney, Netflix, Nike, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, AT&T, Goldman Sachs, Boeing, IBM, and Ford. How did a computer company that started in a California garage in 1976 and was on the verge of bankruptcy become worth now more than some countries' entire GDPs?
Let's meanwhile note that Apple just hit the $3 trillion mark in total market cap. This is the first $3 trillion company trading in the U.S., probably trading in the world. Just a couple of years after we crossed $1 trillion for the first time, it's now doubled and tripled that level.
Was Steve Jobs the reason for their success, or a hindrance to it? This is a tale of loyalties and betrayal, groundbreaking innovations, as well as uninspired failures. Stay with us as we tell you all about Apple's rise to the top of the tech industry and how it got there. Watch until the end as we answer these questions and more. So, let's dive right in. Apple officially became the first $1 trillion company in history. It didn't stop there. It went on to become the first ever company to break the $2 billion and $3 billion valuation in the following years as well. It must come as no surprise, as Apple continues to astonish the world with its innovative products and services. The company had to go through years of struggle, various failures, and accomplishments, which finally led to the way it stands today. The first ever company to be valued above $1 trillion. Join us as we travel down memory lane to examine Apple's history, from the time when it operated solely out of a garage in California to the present, as the most prosperous business ever. Let's examine Apple's success in detail to learn how it grew to be so successful, and to learn about all of the difficulties and controversies the business faced on the way. From the start, Apple's trajectory has been a little unusual. Who would have imagined that a college dropout would have such a great vision? Three men, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, created Apple in 1976, with the goal of selling Wozniak's custom-built personal computer, known as the Apple I. A motherboard featuring a CPU, RAM, and entry-level textual video processors was advertised as the Apple I. Before being upgraded in 1977, it lacked a built-in keyboard, monitor, casing, or any other human interface devices. The Apple I went on sale in July 1976, and it cost $666.66. Steve Wozniak had a specific fondness for repeating numbers, which is why the pricing was a fancy number. However, only a few weeks after the business was established, Ronald Wayne made the decision to quit. Wayne then accepted an $800 check, which 40 years later would have been worth over $72 billion. The original Apple logo was hand-drawn by Wayne. Then, in 1977, Rob Janoff's bitten Apple design took its place. On January 3, 1977, the Apple Computer Inc. was formally established. The multimillionaire Mike Markkula, who had expressed interest in the Apple I, offered the business knowledge and financing that the company needed. Mike Markkula was the third employee and owned a third of the business. Since he believed Steve was too young and inexperienced to serve as the company's first president and CEO, he proposed a man by the name of Michael Scott. The Apple II was first released in 1977, also by Wozniak. The revolutionary spreadsheet and calculator program, VisiCalc, gave the Apple II computers the edge over market leaders Tandy and Commodore PET. Users had another motivation to purchase the Apple II, thanks to VisiCalc's official functionality. The Apple II completely transformed the computer industry with the addition of color graphics. By 1978, Apple had a genuine office, a staff of people working there, and a line for manufacturing the Apple II. The Apple company's revenues increased quickly in the years that followed, tripling every 4 months. Between September 1977 and September 1980, their yearly revenues increased from $775,000 to $118 million. In 1979, Jobs and a few staff were permitted to tour the Xerox PARC lab. The laser printer, mouse, Ethernet networking, and other technological innovations made it famous around the world. In exchange for the opportunity to purchase 100,000 shares of Apple for $10 a share, Jobs and his engineers paid a visit to the PARC complex. With IBM and Microsoft entering the market, the competition was rising by the year 1980. In order to compete with these businesses in the corporate computing sector, Apple released Apple III in the same year. Due to a design issue, the Apple III was not as successful. Jobs had insisted that computers not have fans or vents in order to avoid noise. However, this led to issues because of dangerous overheating. Hence, the Apple III lost out to IBM computers. The start of a new decade saw Apple take its biggest gamble yet. On December 12, 1980, Apple went public at a price of $22 per share. Apple's $4.6 million worth of shares promptly sold out and produced more capital than any other IPO since the Ford Motor Company in 1956, according to the EDN network. Jobs took over as the head of the Macintosh team and changed its fortunes.
I'm glad you had a chance to see Macintosh. I'm really excited about it myself. I love products, Sony Profiles and Walkman and beautiful Braun appliances and beautiful Mercedes-Benz automobile designs. Macintosh is the neatest product I've ever seen in my life. And I think that combined with Lisa 2, we've got a 32-bit family of products that is going to be able to not only increase the productivity in offices and colleges around the world, but is going to be able to make a qualitative difference in the way that we communicate with each other. And what's so exciting about Macintosh is, while Lisa pioneered this amazing technology, this amazing software technology that makes this possible, with Macintosh we've been able to take that software technology and pull it down into a price range that's going to be affordable not just to the corporation, as Lisa is, but to the individual. And we're going to find people buying Macintoshes for their own use, or for use in a dormitory, or for use in a corner of a corporation that might never have gotten a computer before. And coupled with this radical ease of use which Lisa technology provides, I think we're going to be able to bring these products to not just hundreds of thousands or a few million people, but tens of millions of people. And that's really what the personal computer revolution is all about.
The Macintosh was a commercial triumph. Apple chose to price the Macintosh such that home users could afford it, despite the fact that the graphics technology it used was quite expensive. Design experts were drawn to it because of its black and white graphics and visual capabilities, and it was successful in the desktop publishing business in particular. In January of 1984, the Macintosh went on sale for $2,495. Although it wasn't cheap, it offered good value for the money. 70,000 units were sold as a result of the 1984 advertisement.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives we have created for the first time in all history. A garden of pure ideology where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be.
When Mark Marcola, the second CEO of Apple, decided to resign in 1983, about the time the Macintosh was introduced, Jobs selected John Scully to take over as the company's new CEO.
And then he looked up at me and just stared at me with this stare that only Steve Jobs has. He said, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" And I just gulped, because I knew I would wonder for the rest of my life, what I would have missed.
As Macintosh failed to challenge IBM's stranglehold, the conflict between Jobs and Scully increased. Moreover, Scully desired strict control over upcoming projects, but Jobs preferred to do things his own way. As tensions between Jobs and Scully developed in 1985, Jobs staged a coup in an effort to remove Scully. But it failed.
I hired the wrong guy.
That was Scully?
Yeah. And he destroyed everything I'd spent 10 years working for. Starting with me, but that wasn't the saddest part.
The Apple board sided with Scully and relieved Jobs of his leadership responsibilities. Jobs later left his position and started a new business called Next. Around the same time, Steve Wozniak also departed the firm, selling the majority of his shares and claiming that it was headed in the wrong way. The board was free to consider what kinds of devices Apple would produce now that Jobs had left the business. They made the decision to sell more expensive Macs to high-end markets. They could only implement this approach after Steve Jobs left, since he disliked the idea of raising pricing. They concurred that, despite the possibility of selling fewer units, equivalent or greater profits must be made. In place of Steve Jobs, Scully employed a man named Gasset. Jean-Louis Gasset's mandate that the Macintosh 2 should provide at least 55% profit per unit was known as the 55 or die policy. Despite being more expensive than competing computers on the market, Apple's fans remained steadfast due to features like the user interface. In 1991, Apple unveiled the PowerBook notebook and the System 7 operating system. System 7 was responsible for introducing color to the Macintosh OS and remained in use until the release of OS X in 2001. Apple tried to enter new markets throughout the 90s. Gasset also contributed to the creation of innovative goods like the eMat and the Newton Message Pad, in the hopes that they would propel the business to new heights. With prices as high as $700 and only note-taking and contact management capabilities, these new products could not succeed in the market, and the Newton Message Pad ended up being Apple's 1990s disaster. In 1990, Gasset's employment also came to an end. Later, Apple released the less expensive Macintosh Classic, the Macintosh LC, and Macintosh 2 SI models, all of which were successful in driving up sales. In the final years of the decade, as IBM clones became more affordable and Microsoft's influence grew, Apple's 55 or die philosophy backfired. Macs had a great selection of applications, but also had several restrictions. On the other hand, Windows 3.0 was discounted for affordable commodity machines. Apple needed to regain market share, so they unveiled a brand new lineup of computers, including the Quadra, Centris, and Performa. All three products failed to attract customers and were largely flops. Apple also tried out speakers, TV appliances, portable CD players, digital cameras, and other items, but none of them were successful. Market share and stock prices for Apple kept falling. Scully spent a lot of effort and money porting System 7 to the new IBM Motorola PowerPC CPU rather than the Intel processor, which only served to exacerbate the issues. Since Intel CPUs were more prevalent and less expensive, the majority of the software was built for them. Therefore, Apple had no chance of regaining market share. The Apple board had had enough of the line of devices' dismal sales and the pricey switch to PowerPC. Scully was ousted in 1993, and Michael Spindler, a German immigrant who had worked for Apple since the 1980s, took over as CEO. Unfortunately, Spindler was forced to correct Scully's PowerPC error. Despite the 1994 release of the first PowerPC supported by Macintosh, Apple's bad luck persisted. The widespread use of Windows at the time was one of the causes. Gil Amelio took Spindler's post as CEO in 1996. Amelio implemented a number of reforms, such as cost-cutting measures and mass layoffs. In February of 1997, Emilio made the decision to buy Jobs' next computer for $429 million, bringing him back to Apple. In July of 1997, Jobs persuaded the board to name him the interim CEO. The board supported Jobs because of the significant financial losses and a 3-year low stock price. A week later, Emilio announced his resignation. Apple was on the edge of bankruptcy in 1997, though it never really filed. Extreme steps were required to prevent the company from going out of business. Jobs revealed that Microsoft and Apple would collaborate to develop new versions of Microsoft for Macintosh during the 1997 Macworld Expo. Additionally, he disclosed that $150 million had been invested by Microsoft in non-voting Apple stock. Apple unveiled the online Apple Store on November 10, 1997. Jonathan Ives, as a designer, intrigued Jobs, and together they worked to restore Apple's reputation. The all-in-one computer, known as the iMac, was unveiled on August 15, 1998. The iMac design team was overseen by Jonathan Ive, who would go on to create the iPod and the iPhone. Due to cutting-edge technology features and a distinctive style, 80,000 units of the iMac were sold in just 5 months. Jobs prefers to focus on a small selection of products rather than a broad range. Other divisions that he shut down included the Newton Message Pad. In 2001, the Mac OS X was released.
It's my pleasure today to announce Mac OS X.
The iPod portable digital audio player was introduced in the same year.
And let me show you. This is what iPod looks from the side. Again, about 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to show you the back first because I'm in love with it. It's stainless steel. It's really, really durable. It's beautiful. And this is what the front of it looks like. Boom. That's iPod. I happen to have one right here in my pocket, matter of fact. There it is, right there.
And sold 100 million units in just 6 years. Apple finally made the decision to transition to a system architecture based on Intel in 2006. Apple's first notebook using an Intel Core CPU was the MacBook Pro. The price of an Apple share climbed from $6 per share to $80 per share between 2003 and 2006, a rise of more than 10 times. On January 9, 2007, the iPhone was unveiled at the Macworld Expo.
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years.
Jobs said that the business will now be known as Apple Inc. because it had expanded its focus to include consumer products. The first 30 hours of the iPhone's sales saw 270,000 units sold, making it a game changer for the industry. The launch of the iPhone, iPod Touch, and iPad products was also a resounding success. Apple introduced the App Store in July 2008 to market and sell third-party iPhone and iPod Touch software. The App Store was able to record an average daily revenue of $1 million within a month and sold 60 million applications. In October 2010, Apple stock reached a startling $300. On August 24, 2011, due to health reasons, Steve Jobs resigned as CEO.
I'd like to take a moment and thank everybody in the Apple community for the heartfelt support I got too. It really meant a lot. And I'd also like to especially thank Tim Cook and the entire executive team of Apple. They really rose to the occasion and ran the company very ably in that difficult period. So thank you guys. Let's give them a round of applause.
And was succeeded by Tim Cook. On October 5, 2011, Jobs passed away, causing a significant detour in the company's history. Even so, Apple has continued to shape markets with groundbreaking technological marvels. But this success has come at a cost. Apple and controversy have never parted company. Over the past 2 decades, Apple has been the target of several allegations and scandals. When reputable trade publication Consumer Reports stated that it cannot, in good faith, recommend the new Apple smartphone in July 2010, the iPhone 4 took a significant hit. This scandal famously became known as the Antenna Gate. When the iPhone 4 first became available in early June 2010, everything went well. The critically regarded phone became popular, breaking pre-order and first weekend sales records. Then the honeymoon ended, and problems began. A few consumers started having dropped calls, which brought the issue to light. The flaw was most obvious when the iPhone 4 was held in the left hand, and the user's palm covered the tiny antenna gap on the device. The issue was brought on by Apple design chief Johnny Ive's decision to remove the plastic antenna band from the prior iPhone for aesthetic purposes. Following the Antenna Gate uproar, Apple CEO Steve Jobs took an early flight from a vacation with his family in Hawaii to hold a press conference. He defended the iPhone 4 while candidly addressing the issue and providing a fix.
You know, we're not perfect. We know that. You know that. And phones aren't perfect either. But we want to make all of our users happy. However, we started getting some reports of people having issues with the antenna system, which is a very advanced new antenna system. And the problems they were saying, obviously Gizmodo put their video on the web, people were touching X marks the spot here, and they were seeing a large drop in bars.
Antenna Gate victims received complimentary covers and bumpers from Apple, and the issue was fixed in later iPhone iterations. This was followed by yet another huge scandal surrounding their smartphones. The iPhone 6 and 6 Plus hit the market with a bang, selling millions of models. But there was one huge flaw in all of them: their structural integrity. Due to these structural issues, the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus would actually bend when placed under pressure in a trouser pocket, a situation dubbed as Bendgate by many. Apple invited a few members of the media to observe its iPhone testing procedures while asserting that incidences of bending were very rare. It was later discovered that they were aware of this significant design defect and purposefully kept the general public in the dark about it. However, things didn't stop there. One of the biggest scandals in Apple's history came in the second half of the 2010s, in the form of Batterygate. Over 30 US states filed charges, alleging that Apple deliberately slowed down older phones to encourage customers to purchase new ones. Millions of customers were impacted by the Batterygate controversy in 2016 that saw the iPhone 6 and 7 as well as the SE devices slowed down. Apple failed to respond, but it had previously claimed that the phone's performance was lowered to protect against deteriorating battery life. Apple upgraded the software on the iPhone 6, 7, and SE models in 2016, which reduced processor speeds on dated phones. After researchers discovered strange slowdowns in 2017, Apple acknowledged its update lowered power needs. According to the states, Apple acted dishonestly and ought to have replaced the batteries or notified their customers of the problem. In 2020, the newest iPhone 12 from Apple did not come with an earpods or a charging adapter. The accompanying Apple Watches experienced the same thing. Apple provided a charging cord but asked customers to provide their own wall-pluggable charging bricks. The corporation gave two simple justifications: shifting to a cellular experience and lowering carbon emissions. Customers, however, were left dissatisfied by this decision, although the company took no steps to reverse its decision and still continues to ship its mobiles and watches without any charging bricks. Apple's rule has been filled with failures, victories, controversies, and losses, but it has demonstrated its marketability. Apple's success story is one of struggles, sacrifices, relentlessness, and perseverance. How things turn out in the future is anybody's guess, But as of today, Apple proudly stands all alone atop the throne of tech industry. Do you own an Apple product? Do you think the company is worth all of this hype and deserves to be the biggest tech company in the world? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel to stay tuned with more of our content. Until then, see you next time.